Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fantasy Burn. I'm your host, Brendan Booth. At Big Boned FFB is where you can find me. I have a very special episode for you today. My guest is Bo McBrayer. You can find him on Twitter at Bo McBigtime. He is a local guy from Northern California, just like me. We get into that in the episode, what it's like growing up in Northern California and how unique an experience that is. We get into foodways. We get into Northern California fandom. We talk about the paths we took getting into fantasy football analysis and content creation and everything, being sports fans our entire lives. And then at the end, at the power rankings, Bo gives us his top 5 Super Bowl foods to serve to your guests. 2 of them are absolutely mind-blowing, and all 5 of them I'm putting on my Super Bowl spread this year. Next year, technically. Before we get into the episode, I want you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, comment, because that gets the algorithm going, share it with your peeps on social medias, and go ahead and hit the bell so that every time I drop a new episode, which is basically weekly plus my Monday with Fantasy Burn, you'll get a notification. Now, I haven't done the Monday Meltdown in a couple weeks, and that's actually not true. I have done the Monday Meltdown. The problem is the last episode I did, I accidentally shared a little bit of the Monday Night Football game, the Eagles beating the Chiefs, and so YouTube removed the video. So my guest at Raiderdamus and I, Tyler Smith, we talked for a good 2 hours, and then I did a nice half-hour rant with my top 5 Thanksgiving foods, and that edition of the Monday Meltdown got pulled. So it's lost to the ether, and what are you going to do? I want to give a shout out to one of my newest subscribers, Nathan King. What up, Nate? Miss you, buddy. Roll Tide. And think, oh, we're on, but we've actually been on for like 30 seconds. Oh, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Fantasy Burn. I'm your host, Brendan Booth at Big Boned FFB on Twitter. And with me today is my special guest, Bo McBigtime, Bo McBrayer. He can tell you where he can be found and the kinds of things that he does right now. Go.
You can find me on the X, formerly known as Twitter, Bo_McBigtime. And I'm glad to join a fellow NorCal wide body. We are the big boned. We love food, we love drinks, we love good vibes. And I've actually cooked for Brendan now. I can actually
Yes.
say that Brendan has been to my house and had some of the fare. I love to cook. I love to make filthy food porn on Instagram, and I love to write about football. Uh,
Yes.
my profession is still I'm a hearing care provider at Costco. I'm the best there is at that. So we're gonna keep that rolling too because I gotta get I gotta keep my health insurance.
I was just at your Costco this morning and dropped a nice $1,600.
That executive check's gonna be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I'm here with Bo. I met up with Bo because of the Scott Fish Bowl 13. If anybody is questioning how big the Scott Fish Bowl community is, don't question it anymore because it brings people together. Bo and I were both at the San Francisco Live Draft. He's in the Roundtable division. I'm in the Buena Vista Cafe division. We'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about our fishbowl teams. But Bo had a call out for a bunch of people to come over and have a swim party late in the summer at his house, which is about 12 miles away from me and right around the block from my best friend. And so I was like, heck yeah, I'm going to go drop some of my ball pubes in his pool filter. And so we had a really, really good time. One of the best pictures I've ever seen is a bunch of large men with their shirts off, taking a selfie in Bo's kitchen, and it was a good time. Still talked about
It was a
amongst.
pre-hibernation bear meeting.
Yeah, it was good. And before we get started, though, let me just shout out your line of seasonings and hot sauce. This hot sauce is one of the best hot sauces I've ever had. The seasonings are so good. I wound up like putting the taco seasoning on everything I ate for like a good 2 weeks after I got the box. So up above me, behind my head, is his line of big time seasonings and this hot sauce. Hot box hot sauce. It's phenomenal. And go ahead and tell everybody where they can cop that, because you look like you have a little bit of idle time and you'd like to box some stuff up and send it out for money.
Yeah, I do box stuff up for money. I make everything fresh in my home kitchen. You have the big time bundle right there on that shelf next to Boba Fett, who would tell you this is the way. This is the way to flavor. I've been making your mother-in-law's cooking tolerable since 2020. This was kind of the hot sauce was the flagship. That was what I accidentally created right before everything got locked down, and then the online business was born from that because I couldn't keep track of orders over Twitter DMs anymore. And then I added my Smoke Shack rub to the party a couple months later because I've been making ribs. I've been barbecuing for my entire life. And so I had a rib rub that I'd been making all my barbecue stuff with. And that was the second one in line. Then I just kept adding on to it. Taco seasoning. I don't like using junk ingredients. I don't like using fillers. I don't like using soy products. Everything in my line of products up there, all four seasoning blends and the hot sauce, are vegan, gluten free, and clean ingredients only. I use as much organic as I can find at a reasonable price, and I use a culinary approach to everything I make. So the blends make sense, they're balanced, and you can find all of them at bigtimeflavor.co.
Bigtimeflavor.co. And it's what, 45 bucks
Yep,
shipped,
that's
and
45
it
bucks. Shipping is anywhere between $6 to $9. So it's pretty reasonable. I do ship worldwide. So if you're in Canada, I have a lot of people up there in Canada that love my products. I've shipped to the UK. I've shipped to Italy and France. I probably could ship anywhere that had a mailbox. I mean, honestly, the way the website's set up is if you're willing to spend to get your hands on it, it'll be worth it.
heads up, Mike Grindberg. Get yourself some of this stuff sent up to Winnipeg, Manitoba, to ease the pain from that Blue Bombers loss yesterday, which was crazy.
Womp womp.
I don't know if anybody watches the CFL. I couldn't, but I followed it because former California Golden Bear legend Kenny Lawler is a wide receiver for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So I've been tracking his season all year. The Blue Bombers made the Grey Cup. They go into the Grey Cup. They got a lead with about 2 minutes left. And former University of Nevada, Reno legend Cody Fajardo, who is one of
Mm-hmm.
two quarterbacks in NCAA history with 9,000 yards passing and 3,000 yards rushing in his career. The only other one is Colin Kaepernick, also
UNR.
University of Nevada, Reno Wolfpack. Cody Fajardo throws a touchdown, 40-something yard touchdown with 11 seconds left to win the Grey Cup,
Wow.
which is America's hat football. It's just weird to watch guys sprinting 10 yards from 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage as their motion, and just
Mm-hmm.
like going full out, and the weird goalpost at the front of the 20-yard end zone and 110-yard field, and some of the tracking it'll say like has it on the Montreal 55-yard line, and you're like, wait, there's no wow. So it's kind of weird. They had to tweak it and make it their own game, but it's still pretty fun to watch. And it was
It is.
apparently a good game. Green Day played the halftime show, which, hey, Super Bowl people, get on that. Northern California band, and that I saw in 1989 at the Davis Veterans Memorial Center when I was a young pup in high school. And Green Day played and just absolutely destroyed the halftime show. Apparently, even at this late age, they can still
Oh
those
yeah.
those North Bay kids can still rock the house. Yeah. So I just want to shout out YOLO because that's the county we live in, and that leads me into Bo, or can I call you Bosif or Beauregard?
My
Bo,
grandpa called me Bosepi, like Giuseppe, but with Bo.
that's one I didn't think of.
Me
Uh,
either.
I did get to Bosif, but where are you from?
I
What are
am
your
from Corning,
origins?
California, the olive capital of the world, where there are more olive trees than the entire country of Greece.
I
So,
love olives.
so yeah, Olive City, Corning, little freeway town of 7,000 people, and it's small and it's got a lot of olive trees. And so all the olive oils and jarred olives that you see at the grocery store, you can thank Corning, California for that. And it's the most olive trees in the world, except for the entire country of Italy. So there's just as almost as many olive trees in tiny Corning, California, as there are in Italy.
Nice. Yeah, my girlfriend just went to Turkey in the springtime. Well, she was in Turkey, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and another stand. And when she was in Turkey, they went to the bazaar, the market,
Hmm.
and she took a picture for me. Well, she took lots of pictures for me, but she took a picture for me of the olive selection in the Turkish bazaar, and it was like mind-boggling. It was
Yeah,
like,
it's
and
like
as
the
an olive
cracker aisle
lover,
at the grocery store. It's like, how
yeah.
many crackers do we need on an aisle? There's just too many to choose from.
And the other thing is the Davis Food Co-op has an actual olive bar, so they have a bunch of probably Corning olives
Oh yeah.
that you can choose from in different Mediterranean styles. All right, so you grew up in Corning. How what did you get into sports? We're Northern California boys, so we got a couple of options. We got the Warriors and the Kings. We got the Giants
Hmm.
and the A's. We got the Niners and the Raiders.
Yeah.
Um, the
So
Sharks are there too.
I grew up loving sports, obsessed with sports. I could recite every stat. Like that was what I did as I memorized stats from all sports. And my parents, like as the easiest stocking stuffer gift, would buy me the ESPN Sports Almanac every single year, and it had every stat from every sport across the world. And I would read it front to back multiple times. By the time New Year's Eve the ball dropped, I had this thing memorized front to back. So from 5 6 years old I was watching the Cowboys play on Thanksgiving, and
Mhm.
my mom bought me an Emmett Smith jersey. She bought me a Deion Sanders jersey later on. I had Troy Aikman, I had Michael Irvin, and I'd wear silver and blue every Thanksgiving in a sea of red and gold and silver and black, and that was kind of my middle finger to all the annoying Raiders and Niners fans, even though I love the Giants. Like I'm a huge diehard Giants fan. I love the Kings. I went to Kings games as a kid, so it was really cool to drive up to the big city of Natomas and watch at Arco Arena, watch the Kings back when they were good. I mean, it's been a long time, but they're finally good again.
Yes, they
It's been since then, since I was a kid going to see Mike Bibby and Chris Webber and Vladi and Peja and all those guys. Rick Adelman was the coach. Grant Napier wasn't such a pile back then. He
sure.
was actually really entertaining as a
If you don't like
broadcaster.
that, you don't like NBA
Oh man,
basketball.
that would get you so psyched up watching
Yeah.
that on Fox Sports Net.
Yeah, and Hot Talk 1140 and the Rise Guys and
Oh
all
yeah,
that stuff. That's it's a very unique upbringing here in the Sacramento Valley. We're right on the cusp of the Bay Area too, so like Bo lives in Woodland. Woodland and Davis are kind of connected, and
yeah.
then Davis and Dixon are kind of connected. And Davis and Dixon run along 80, which goes to Sacramento. Dixon is considered Solano County, which is the very edge of the Bay Area.
Hmm.
So my town touches the edge of the Bay Area, and then the next town over is Bo's town. So we're all Bay Area. Like it,
Yeah,
I mean, what
Bay
are we?
Area adjacent is what I
Yeah, I
like to
mean,
say. It takes an hour to an hour and a half to get to anywhere in the Bay Area that we want to go to,
yes,
and there are a lot of perks to that.
yeah, because you don't have to be in the city, but you
You
can get there pretty
don't have
quickly.
to live there, you don't have to do anything, but if there's something in the city, there's a lot to do in the city that's fun. There's amazing restaurants. There's all sorts of things you can do in San Francisco, Oakland, Alameda, Richmond. like the whole Bay Area has everything you could ever possibly want.
Yes, not to mention the Napa Valley, the North Coast. We got Tahoe and
Mm.
Reno that are within 2 hours away. It's such a special location. And then if you really want to get technical and historical, the Patwin Indians. We live in what was the Patwin Indian Range, and their range extended into what was the inside of the Bay Area. So this is technically still the Bay Area. Anyway. Yeah, so I do power rankings. We'll get to that way at the end of the show. But if I had to say, and backtracking a little bit, in my power rankings, one of my top 5 favorite San Francisco Giants of all time, you mentioned his name, Deion Sanders. Anyway, I like obscure
He
trivia.
wasn't always Coach Prime for all those young, uninitiated folks.
Right.
We're talking about between him and Bo Jackson, maybe one of the best athletes to ever live, Deion
Absolutely.
Sanders. If you don't know about Deion Sanders, who played in a World Series game and an NFL game in the same weekend, that should tell you everything you need to know, that he was good enough to play both sports. He was awesome at both sports.
Yeah, and he's considered one of the best, if not the best, lockdown cornerbacks that ever played in the
Ever.
NFL. And he also hit 300 for the Giants. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking elite level athlete. Bo Jackson was my favorite player.
My
Um,
dad's a Raiders fan, and I was born in '87. Where do you think my name kind of came from?
that's I'm jealous that I was born earlier than that, before Bo Jackson. Uh, all right, so uh, sports automatically leads to getting into fantasy sports. When did you start playing fantasy sports? Did you start with baseball? Did you start with football?
I started with baseball, and I got really good at it because I was always a baseball kid. Like I played baseball since I was 4 or 5 years old, and that was my dad was a coach. My dad was an All-American middle infielder, so he was very upset that I ended up being left-handed because instead of playing second base or shortstop like him, I was playing center field and pitching,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't tall enough to play first base. So it was more like it was like, hey, you're gonna run the outfield and you're gonna pitch when your time comes up. And so it took a while for him to accept that I wasn't right-handed and I couldn't play his old position. But fantasy baseball first, I got really good at that. I started a family league when I got together with my wife, and we ran that baseball league for 4 or 5 years before everybody kind of got too busy for it. And right about that time, it was college, like when fantasy football started being online mostly. Like you could join a ESPN or CBS league or a Yahoo. And I had a league early on with all three of those sites, and I started reading Eric Carabell and Matthew Berry and all these people, and I was competing against my college counselors. Some of my professors played, and turns out that when you know a lot about football, that you can win a lot of money off these people that only passively watch the games on Sunday. And
Right.
so that got me. When you win early on, you get hooked. You get
Mm-hmm.
hooked on that rush. You get hooked on the success and winning money off of people and winning bragging rights off people who are close to you. That's a really powerful drug, and I got hooked early on in probably 2005, 2006, and ever since I've been playing fantasy football, and now it's taken over where I actually have a side hustle as a fantasy sports writer, and I write about golf too because that's my other sport that I played back in college and high school. And so yeah, the rest is history. I don't even have time to play fantasy baseball anymore because it requires too much bandwidth. I don't have it anymore.
Yeah, I was so into fantasy baseball. I was in a GM simulation league, so we had a 25-man roster that we
Yeah,
actually played.
it's always
We had a
turning
Yeah,
every
we had a
day.
40-man roster that we had to assign contracts to. We had
Hmm.
a full minor league system. I had the Twins, and I had 250 players in my spreadsheet. Every time the amateur draft would come around, we would wait a couple months after, and then everybody would draft like the top 200 or something like that, and then everybody else that was on that your team drafted would automatically go into your spreadsheet. We had a an international draft when players would come out of the Venezuelan and Dominican leagues and go into the Arizona Fall League. As soon as they got to the AZL, they would be eligible for our international draft. And then we had like a free agency that was all like bidding on, like we would submit contracts in a form. Everything was on a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet was updated 2 or 3 times a week, and it was just insane how deep that
It took every ounce of your free time.
everything. And I still had 10 or 15 ESPN and Yahoo leagues and all that stuff.
Mm.
And then football would come around and I would play like standard ESPN redraft and blah blah blah. The big thing that turned me though was when the first time I played in a 2 quarterback league, which came out of this baseball league that I was in, and it was on Yahoo and it was 2 quarterbacks. And I was like, "Oh, this is not the standard thing." And so
Ooh,
all of a sudden my mind started working in trying to figure out the little things, and this is what gets people deep in fantasy sports is when they figure out the money ball aspect,
game theory.
the little indicators that not everybody else is looking at, the market
It just
inefficiencies, and from there you start to win, and
mhm.
from that you fully dive deep, and then suddenly somebody's like, hey, let's get into a dynasty league, and you're like, dynasty, oh, we get to keep everybody over the, okay, and then it's over from there. It's over. I mean, I'm in like the 25 to 30. I have 25 leagues on sleeper alone of all different kind of scoring formats, and then I have two Devi teams on Fantrax and MFL charity tournament, and I mean like over 30 teams that I'm trying to like keep track of this year, and
I
that's
remember
what
those days.
that's what made me stop playing doing fantasy baseball. I was so burnt out on fantasy baseball because it's a daily thing, and this has become my replacement for, the key to beating an addiction is replacing it with a better addiction. And so that's kind of what I'm doing there. What is your favorite format to play?
I'm a dynasty nut, so I have 42 dynasties that I'm in right now. So I think I've whittled my redraft down to 6 or 7 leagues that I play in every year. Like they're
Yeah,
just kind of renewal leagues. Couple are I'm the commissioner of that are within friends and family and colleagues. And then, but 42 dynasties. I'm not counting the the best ball dynasties that I've joined over the years. Like a
right.
lot of them got added on during the lockdown, but I'm in 3 campus to Canton leagues, which are awesome. Like you have your college team on fan tracks, and then your dynasty team that you just carry over. There's a 1 round rookie draft for free agents, but all the
Yeah,
rookies come from your college team, and that's so much fun. I want to expand that scope, but 42 dynasty leagues, and I'm only rebuilding in 4 of them, and so
yeah.
it's like taking everybody's lunch money every single year is a lot of fun.
I One of my campus Canton leagues, I wound up in the NCAA final this week, so we'll see how that goes. I'm in the championship, and then in the other campus to Canton league I'm in, I just made a trade. I traded away Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry for Omarion Hampton and Travion Henderson.
Oh, you already won that then.
Right?
Who would give away Travion for that? I would like even Omarion's that's a free addition you got there.
Yeah, and I'm
Travion's
already
worth
sitting on Jaden Ott and Raheem Sanders and
was Travion 20, like it turns 21 at next year. Like
yeah,
this is like you're that's and he's arguably RB1 of his class. I mean
that's
it's kind of a rough class, but he's the top of it or near the
and
top of it.
he dealt with an injury for a little bit, so he kind of lost a little bit of stock. But going into the season, it was like he's the dude, and yeah. So I was and that was offered to me, and I was very happy to smash accept on
Seriously.
that one. All right, what college did you go to? What school did you go to? I'm wearing my colors,
UC
uh,
Davis.
UC
The
Davis.
Aggies. Yeah, I did not go to UC Davis. I thought about it, but I went to Butte Community College. Shout out Aaron
Home of
Rodgers and
Aaron
Hall of Fame.
Rodgers.
Yeah, and of course, Hall of Fame guard for the Dallas Cowboys, Larry Allen, went to Butte College before he went to now non-existent Sonoma State, and then of course became one of the strongest, better, best offensive linemen of all time. But he started at Butte Community College, and he actually went to Butte with some of my friends that I play golf with. So it's a full circle kind of thing. But I went to Butte at the same time as Jordan Rodgers, Aaron's little brother. But I met Aaron at a party, had a beer with him, talked football. It was his first year as a starter for the Packers, so third or fourth season there,
Yeah.
and that was kind of the highlight of going to Butte and then transferring to Chico State.
Woo!
Of course, I went to Chico, partied it up for 2 years, got my degree, and I'm still an Oregon Ducks fan because I mean Butte football is great, but it's not like you can say, "Hey, yeah, I'm going to root for a JUCO team as my favorite NCAA team," because
Sure.
so I grew up an Oregon Ducks fan. So being from the very northern part of California, spending a lot of summers in Oregon with my aunt and uncle, their kids, my cousins went to U of O. I love the Ducks, always will. And Chico doesn't have a football team. I even have a shirt that says Chico State football undefeated since 1994.
Chico State does have a Division II national championship baseball team, though.
Yep. And they also won national championship in golf with JJ Jakovac, who is now the caddy for Colin Morikawa.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's another. We are in the Sacramento Valley, but we both have connections to the Butte area, which is Oroville, Chico, and Paradise. My
Mm-hmm.
father's family is all from Paradise. My grandparents were born in Chico. My dad grew up in Oroville. So that forms this triangle. It used to be called the Crystal Triangle in the early 90s when that's where all of the best meth in the country came from. And Butte College is like right in the center of that triangle. So
Yeah.
like
And
almost
it's tucked in.
equidistant.
It's tucked into the foothills. You can't see it from anywhere.
Yeah, if you drive from Oroville to Paradise, you pass Butte College. If you drive from Oroville to Chico, you pass Butte College. And that's of course, like we said, where Aaron Rodgers started his collegiate career. He did go to high school at Pleasant Valley High School in Chico,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually took a class there one time. And UC Davis, I attended for one term. Took a neuropsychology class that was there. That was one of my favorite classes that I ever took. But I grew up in Davis. My parents working for the university, my dad being a graduate, aunt, uncle graduates, and my dad started taking me to UC Davis Aggies games when I was very very small, and they beat North Dakota State to advance to the D2 national championship one year. And as Ken O'Brien was coming off the field, he gave one wristband to me and one wristband to my buddy. And then he was the New York Jets quarterback. And I was like, oh, this is so good. And then we had a family friend, Mike Wise, who was from the town I was born, uh, Novato, California, hashtag Novato Boys, Jared Goff, also from there.
North Bay.
And yeah. And yeah, Mike Wise played for the Raiders. Tragic story. It's fantastic story, but yeah, he was 6'7", 290, and Howie Long's backup. So that he's a
Yeah.
good story
Never.
too.
It's pretty crazy too. Like all the Hall of Fame people, like of all industries, of all walks of life, the vast majority of the greatest of anything that you can think of come from Northern California.
Yeah, if we're just talking about
Which is why I
Novato,
call it it's but yeah, I know it's just like you even it's like say, oh, Novato is this, Napa is this,
yeah,
San Francisco, like you just say NorCal, and that's why I like my bio on Twitter says NorCal shouter outer, because you
yeah,
could say you could name an industry, and I was like, well, the greatest that your industry's ever seen, guess what, from NorCal, it's
right.
the birthplace of goats.
Novato, Marin County. Jared Goff was born there. I was born there. Uh, Mike Morosky,
Goats.
who played NFL, he was a quarterback for the Falcons. Mike Wise, who was a DN for the Raiders. The Grateful Dead lived there.
Hmm.
Bob Weir lived there. Huey Lewis and the News lived there. The saxophone player lived next door to my grandparents. Uh, George Lucas, Lucasfilms is right there
Hmm.
in Marin County in
Yeah.
the
Anybody
area.
ever heard of Star Wars? Anybody? Just
Right. Yeah, the origins of that guy right there, those guys right there, Boba
hmm
and
NorCal.
uh, Mandalorian,
Guess
NorCal,
where Tupac Shakur was discovered?
Marin City. So I have a
Credence
great,
Clearwater Revival. Yeah, the song Green River is about Puda Creek,
which
NorCal.
runs near my house. I have a
Yeah.
great Tupac story. I'm working in a pizza place. This guy comes in. He's there with his son, and he tells me this story about he had this house in Marin City, and after the club, they would go back to their house or whatever. And so the club shuts down. He goes back to his house. They're having an after party. His bathroom is being remodeled. So everybody has to use one bathroom. So he goes into the bathroom that's usable, and there's a dude in the bathtub naked with two naked women, and they're doing coke. And it was Tupac. And I looked at the kid and I was like, "Do you realize that your dad has the greatest story of anybody?"
Ever.
Tupac was
Ever.
doing coke in my bathtub with two naked girls. Like that is the ultimate
Yeah.
flex. Like nobody can flex harder than that. And
No.
he
No.
didn't really
And
get it. He was
shout
like,
out
"Oh,
NorCal. I mean, it's like we don't even have to talk about football. It's like Tom Brady. Like
yeah, yeah,
everybody's goat. Guess who? Redwood City, San Mateo.
yeah,
Like that's all Northern California. Like Deron Bland, I just tweeted this out yesterday. The corner for the Cowboys that just tied the NFL record for most pick sixes in a season. It's week 11 this week.
yeah."
4 pick sixes. He's from Modesto. Went to school at Sac State. Like this is like everywhere you look, the goats. You can trace everybody, like all the degrees, the third 3 degrees of separation. You only need one because
Right.
all the good stuff is from NorCal.
Barry Bonds. And then you look at the Giants,
Randy
former
Johnson.
Giants, yeah, Randy Johnson, GOAT, former Giants
Mm-hmm.
outfielder, Jock Peterson. Hopefully he
Yep.
finds a home somewhere. He was a wide receiver on the
Devontae
same
Adams.
he was a wide receiver on the same high school football team as Devontae Adams, and both of them wound
Yep.
up playing professional sports. So yeah,
Yeah,
the
and
connections are strong, very strong.
Joe
Uh,
Mixon. Yeah, there's
Mixon,
all
the
these. Yeah.
Thompson family, Sid, Quan, and Shaq,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
one from Cal, one from Washington, both Pac-10 guys. And I'm not ever going to say the other iteration of the Pacific Conference. It's just going to be Pac-10 from now on. I don't need to use the other one.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
ruined it, and
It's
yeah,
done. It's done.
we could spend an hour talking about NorCal
Oh,
sports
minimum.
connections.
Minimum.
Right. Okay. So you get into fantasy football. You're a Cowboys fan. When did you start creating content? What were you doing?
So it actually started with the hot sauce. Like I was just getting back into I created a Twitter account back in 2012. But that was more to follow musicians, chefs. Like I was following just celebrities like every other random person on Twitter back in that day.
For me,
I
it was
got back in
comedians.
Yeah, and I got back into Twitter 2018, 2019, and I started talking to fantasy football people who were analysts on Twitter at that point. So your Howard Bender from Fantasy Alarm. Like I listened to fantasy sports radio on Sirius XM back in those days because I was commuting to work in Folsom, and that was like my connection was I was tweeting at the people that I listened to on the radio. So your Lisa Ann, your Howard Bender, your all these people that had radio shows. I would follow them and tweet at them about fantasy football, and I got connected with those guys early on, and then the hot sauce thing happens in 2020, and that's when I got hooked up with Scott Fish. And Scott Fish bought my hot sauce in the middle of Scott Fish Bowl 10 when he's got more things to do than hours in the day.
Yeah.
And he took time out of his day. I sent him a bottle of my hot sauce, no label or anything on it. And he tries it and he shouts out my hot sauce during the middle of Scott Fish Bowl 10 frenzy,
Damn.
which was during the pandemic, by the way, in
Yeah.
2020, and it just took off. And then after that, they were like, "Oh, somebody was like, "Do you want to write something for us? Like this story is amazing. To write something about whatever you want. Like we want to publish something from you." So I wrote a couple articles as a freelancer, and then it just kind of like I've been writing about sports since I was in seventh grade. Like
Yeah.
Corning High School went to we're in the same region as Pleasant Valley. When I was in eighth grade, I was writing the high school football team. I was following the team. I went on every road trip. I was on the bus with the football team. The varsity team went to Pleasant Valley. We beat Aaron Rodgers at Pleasant Valley, and I wrote the article for the Corning paper about that upset win.
Nice.
I've been writing football and sports since I was 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Oh, I can scratch this itch. Like let me start writing again because like I love to write. I just it wasn't in that space at that moment, but it got me back into it. It's like having more Twitter exposure for a hot sauce thing that got crazy viral all of a sudden in 2020 when everybody else was like, we got shit else to do but join more dynasty leagues and
Right.
order some hot sauce off Twitter, some from this random guy in NorCal. And that's kind of what took off. And as I started getting back into writing, more people wanted me to write for them, and I ended up freelancing for a few years until Fantasy Pros was like, "Hey, we want you to write 3 articles a week and do a lot of off-season stuff." So now I'm doing more scouting and writing, and I'm just with Fantasy Pros. So
Yeah.
it's been great.
Now, if any of you are watching this and you are on the cusp of getting into the fantasy creator space or whatever, Bo's story and my story are fairly parallel.
Hmm.
They both start with Twitter. Bo started a couple years before me, but I started on Twitter in 2010. I just had a conversation a month or two ago with comedian Michael Ian Black, which was one of the first 5 or 6 people that I followed on Twitter in 2010.
Hmm.
13 years later, I finally
15.
have like an interaction with them. Billy Wayne Davis, who's like a stand-up comedian hero of mine, came on my podcast and did an episode, and he's going to do another one. I just went and saw him last week in San Francisco. I do stand-up too. He's gonna let me do a guest spot at some point. Just crazy. And all of that came from Twitter. So I have 2 sides of Twitter. I have one account that I've always used, and it's mostly following comedians and a little bit of politics stuff. And I don't want to mix the politics with
No.
the fantasy side of things. And I created another one because I started writing a Raiders blog about 7 or 8 years ago for an upstart blog company because, again, I've always written sports. I was a Deadspin commenter in 2003, one like
The glory
back
days.
when you had to submit a sample to Will Leach and he had to accept you as a commenter. So I was writing on Deadspin for a long time. I got into the SB Nation thing. I wrote in the comments and fan posts for McCovey Chronicles, the Giants page, and Silver and Black Pride. Developed a relationship with a bunch of those people and Grant Brisby, the McCovey Chronicles guy. Silver and Black Pride hooked up with Raider Damas, who has been on the podcast, should be on the live stream tonight. And and then I went back to that account a year and a half, 2 years ago, just to see what was going on. And I was like, you know what? I might throw out some analysis. And so I started doing that. And then I started following analysts. And then the fishbowl came around. And I was like, oh, okay. I've been I'm a direct descendant of Matthew Barry's love hate column from the very get go, and a lot like him,
Same.
I write screenplay stuff, and he was a former TV writer,
Hmm.
but I started putting out little, hey, these are my hot takes or whatever. Just started doing that a little bit, not like starts and sits and whatever, not really getting much traction. And then the fishbowl hit, and I got my invitation, and all of a sudden, I started getting traction, and I was like, I maybe I can do something with this. This is kind of funny, but the first company that I applied to was Fantasy Pros, and I wrote a column, and there was a point where I'm using this word processing program, and my computer crashed and it didn't save anything. And I just spent like 5 or 6 hours writing these 3 audition columns. So I go back and I'm rushing through everything. And there was an edit point where I guess the the backspace bar got hit a couple times. So it took a few letters out of one of the players' names and I didn't notice it. And then instead of like proofreading everything and sending it on, I just submitted it because I wanted them to think that I was eager and timely. And then they were like, no, go ahead and get back to us. Which was the best thing that I didn't get set up with Fantasy Pros because it kept me hungry. And I got picked up by dynastyprosfootball.com, and then I got picked up by Player Profiler. And then I was like, oh, I can start doing this YouTube, and started putting my channel together and my Substack news and all that stuff. And it was all because of the Scott Fish Bowl, that invitation, hooking up with Bo McBrayer, at meeting people at the live draft, which I was only at because Rhino's brother couldn't go. And that's how I got my spot. So all of these things, they are all
And then
totally
Rhino's
directly
brother
related.
was there at the burger cook-off at my
Yeah,
house.
and then I met the guy that I replaced in the live draft at Bo's house, which was spoiler.
Cool.
I got Johnny Tuma from Player Profiler, who next time he's on, we're gonna his power rankings are gonna be his top 5 shoes of all time, and my number 1. Rhino's brother was wearing those that night, so
he was.
Yeah. All right.
And I agree with your number 1 too.
They
were fire.
And I have the 30th anniversary, which aren't a 30th anniversary release. They are the 32nd version that use design elements from those, and they are the sickest modern shoes, but they're still not as good as the original. All right, so let's talk about the Scott Fish Bowl for a second. We are right at the very end. Tonight is Monday night, and it's the last night, the last game of week 11. The playoff cutoff is after tonight. Where are you sitting?
I automatically qualified with my 13th win last week, so I'm in the playoffs. It's my 4th Scott Fish Bowl, and it's the first time I've made the playoffs.
Nice.
So Scott Fish Bowl 10, right? I draft this awesome team, but my first 8 picks that year all went on IR before the mid-season mark. So I literally lost all my top picks to injury that year, 4 years ago. And then I had some pretty crappy teams the last couple of years. And then this year, I actually finally put some work into building a draft guide for myself and putting it on a spreadsheet for just the Scott Fish Bowl, because I another excuse that I make over the last couple of years of why I didn't make the Scott Fish Bowl playoffs is because I was so geared for a standard PPR setup with my rankings, that using my rankings in a different scoring format, which Scott Fish Bowl has been different every year. The scoring has changed every year. Yeah. I never really recalibrated. I never had time to recalibrate. But for this year, I had an early lead because I'm pretty close with Scott Fish these days. And now his son has been coming up with some of the scoring settings. And so I had an in with Scott early on what the scoring was going to be. And so I was able to tweak my rankings and focus on certain players. And I've just been I start off slow, but I think I won 8 or 9 in a row to make the playoffs. So it's awesome. I finally made the Scott Fish Bowl playoffs, and now I can see what all the fuss is about, because it was kind of embarrassing when you go 0 for 3 as an analyst, as a person who a lot of people read, he didn't even make the Scott Fish Bowl playoffs. It's like half of the 3,000 people make that.
Yeah, and so that's a good segue into a reminder for everybody out there that people who, like us, so I have a little mantra I like to say: we do the work so you don't have to. So I'll do this weekend warm up on Dynasty Pros football, where every week Mike and I, we go through, these are our 3 starts, these are our 3 sits, and I sit down and I look at all of these analytics to come up with my best guesses for who to start and who to sit. For example, this last week I said Start Rico Dowdle. That was more of a dart throw thing. And sit CeeDee Lamb. Now, the data backed me up. Rico Dowdle was on the come up. The game script was going to be in his favor. CeeDee Lamb happened to get a touchdown. If he hadn't, then my play would have been totally correct. Sit CeeDee Lamb. He wasn't going to do much against the Panthers' pass defense. He did wind up with like 6 catches and a touchdown. But if you take that touchdown away, he'd have been right where I said he was going to be. Similar to Jaylen Warren, I said sit him. And if you take away a 74-yard touchdown, he would have been right where I had him. So it's those fluky little things. Again, we do the work so you don't have to, but sometimes life overcomes and we're in the probability business. We are in the what's most likely to happen.
We're
That is
increasing odds of victory. That's the best we
exactly.
can hope for.
Anomalies happen. So you can't
Well,
take
they
somebody's
more than happen. This is football. It's
yeah.
so random. Like
And the fishbowl is a
our
great
job is
example of
just
that.
to. Oh yeah.
So my thing has been absolute with the fishbowl has been absolute luck that I can point to. So my major injuries that I've had to deal with in the fishbowl have been James Conner and Pat Fryermuth. Other than that, everybody else has been basically healthy. My through 200 mock drafts going into the fishbowl, my quarterback that I was taking with the 6th pick was going to be Joe Burrow. On the drive to San Francisco, which is roughly an hour and a half, in my head, I think, nope, I'm taking Lamar. Well, guess what? I'm going to do well in the playoffs because I have Lamar and didn't take Burrow.
Yeah.
My running backs, I was going to take Saquon or Chubb. They both got taken with the 8 guy and the 7 guy took them before my number 6 pick. So I took TJ Hawkinson. And
Nice.
then Jacobs came back around. So it's those little things that
And
lead
Hawkinson
to
in that scoring format is money, 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 money.
absolutely. I knew I wasn't going to get Kelsey. So it was Hawkinson and then just and try and catch some fire later on with Pat Fryermuth, who was due for touchdown regression, but he got hurt and now he has Kenny Pickett, who
Can't throw touchdowns.
can't throw the ball to anybody. Right. So those are the kinds of things that lead to not making the fishbowl the playoffs for 3 years or making the playoffs because it's a huge thing. It's a huge thing. And shout out to Charlene Erickson, who I met at our San Francisco Live draft, who's in the Roundtable League with Bo. Um, Shout out also to Callie King 49er, who's in Bo's division as well. I have a
Yeah.
couple of different leagues
I
that,
carpooled with him to the draft, and
yeah,
he ate my breakfast that I cooked for him and Rod Villagomez, who's also in Roundtable with me.
yeah,
And Rod just got his 13th win this week against me to qualify for the playoffs. So the whole carpool made it.
that's
But
rad.
I'm mad at Mace because Mace carpooled with me, ate my breakfast. I made French toast breakfast sandwiches. They were phenomenal. He comes, eats my food. I drive his ass all the way to San Francisco, hour and a half drive, and he snipes me on Sam Howell. And I've been writing
Ah,
about Sam Howell since he was drafted. I was
yeah,
writing about him when he was at North Carolina. Before he was even draft eligible, I was like, this guy is a first round pick. He ends up slipping to the 5th round. I'm like, don't does like draft capital on Sam Howell does not matter. I want him in all my fantasy teams, especially this year with Eric Bieniemy calling plays.
yeah,
Is there air it out? And sure enough, he of course reads my stuff. He helps out with Fantasy Pros as well. And he goes, he eats my food. I drive his ass all the way to San Francisco, and he snipes Sam Howell for me because I punted quarterback, and I was like, okay, I got Anthony Richardson at the 3 turn. That was fine for the scoring format. Sucks that he got hurt, but me punting quarterback and then him having the audacity to see me punting quarterback and fully prepared to make Sam Howell my back to back pick with Anthony Richardson, and he's like, nope. I'm getting Bo's guy, and sure enough, Mace was the first one to qualify for the playoffs in our division because he had Sam Howell. And
yeah,
so I have a bone to pick with Mace, even though you shouted him out. He's a very close friend of mine. But yeah, him taking Sam Howell before me was like he looked over at me before he made the pick. Before he put the sticker up there, made sure I was watching.
That's funny. Yeah, I have Goff, Lamar, and Sam Howell, and Sam Howell was definitely a target in my most important leagues, the leagues that I care about the most, including the Fishbowl, my home dynasty. Sam Howell is my dude. He was like my absolute target. I traded away Jalen Hurts because I knew that I was going to have Sam Howell, and Howell's been better than I thought he was going to be. So that's been. I didn't trade away Jalen Hurts for Sam Howell. I traded him away for all of the package that I got, but I knew that I would be okay with Sam Howell right there. And uh, Mace had probably the one of the well, it's up there in the biggest flag plants I've ever seen. He shows up to the Fishbowl draft wearing a Jake Moody Michigan jersey. And it was like, I'm a Niner fan. It was good. And what's funny is I'm in 2 or 3 different leagues on with Mace, and then we met at the Fishbowl. So we had already been playing against each other, and he happened to be there. So that was pretty cool. And then Charlene had one of the better stories where she picked the Curtis Samuel sticker and put that up on the when she really meant Debo.
Debo, yeah.
And I don't know who's ranked higher because I have Samuel in the fishbowl, and he had a few good spike weeks while I was waiting for other things to happen, and he's helped me out. So yeah, so we're at week 11. Week 12 is the playoff start, and then after that, it really starts to get interesting. Do you know what your average is at this point?
It's like 220. It's
Okay.
it's I think I would barely qualify on points if I didn't hit my 13th win. I think I'd still be in with my point total. But like the yeah, I'm glad I qualified with wins because I didn't want to have to scramble for points because my week 11 matchups were awful. Like
Yeah,
I was like I have to clinch this in week 10 because week 11 looked brutal.
I wound up my week 11 didn't add anything to my points. For people who don't know, when the fishbowl playoffs start, your score becomes your average for the first 11 weeks. So
Hmm.
if it's 220, then you get 220 points plus what you
Plus, yeah.
score. So if you score 220 again, it's 440.
And then there's a
And
cutoff every week, and it whittles
yeah,
it down very quickly.
right. So I'm hoping at this point, now that I've made the playoff, I hope that I can last until week 14. If I can last that long or beyond, then I'm gonna be happy. Okay, so with the fishbowl, we can't trade, but today is basically the trade deadline in most leagues that have a trade deadline. When we're talking about rest of the season in our dynasty leagues and redraft leagues and things like that, who are you targeting? Who are you looking at for rest of the season players?
So I'm looking at players who not only have favorable schedules, but have also are trending in the right direction, or maybe they're struggling where I can get them at a better price. Like I can really leverage the situation where maybe a team is also contending like I am, but they're a little bit worried about a certain player, and maybe that player is Tony Pollard. Like, oh yeah, he finally scored a touchdown after going all those 9 weeks without a single touchdown. It's like I know that schedule opens up. I know the Cowboys are going to want to continue to run the football, and Rico Dowdle is going to get an increasing timeshare. So we've seen that the last couple of weeks, but I'm looking to add Tony Pollard while everybody's kind of like, oh man, is this just kind of a fluke thing where he's finally scored a touchdown? Or can we actually count on this guy to be the RB1 that we drafted him to be? I think he's going to be a league winner. So I'm looking to add him probably for a pretty easy price. Like if I have two decent wide receivers that are playing hot right now, like I might want to flip just straight up Tank Dell for Tony Pollard because I love Tank Dell, but I don't know that Tank Dell is going to be a league winner for me after what he's already done. Like he's got
Right,
me to this point, but right now I'm looking if I've already qualified for the playoffs, which in a lot of my leagues I have. If I'm trying to get into the playoffs, I'm keeping Tank Dell. But if I'm saying I'm already locked it up, I'm looking at the schedule, I'm thinking, okay, who's going to win me the league in the playoffs and I look at the schedule, I want Tony Pollard. I want guys, the veteran wide receivers that maybe haven't done a whole lot yet. Devontae Smith of the Eagles. Like I'm interested to see what he does against that very tight man coverage that the Chiefs like to run tonight.
Hmm.
I think Devontae Smith could run a big performance out tonight and throw a monkey wrench into my value trades that I'm going to throw out this week. But yeah, Tony Pollard and Devontae Smith, and then of course I actually do think that Kyle Pitts can be a top 5 tight end rest of season because they're going back to Desmond Ritter. They've had the bye week to finally figure out what they want their offense to look like,
Yeah.
and it's as bad as Arthur Smith is at his job, I still think that he's capable of pulling a team together that's not out of it yet. They're 4-6. They're a couple games back in the worst division in football. I think that they're going to emphasize their better players. Against my better judgment, I do not trust Arthur Smith, but I also kind of trust the talent over the situation, and that's where I'm gonna go is try to acquire guys who haven't done a whole lot this year but have the talent to explode
Right.
and win me leagues.
So I have some names. Uh, Pollard is definitely one of them. And it looked like Brandon Cooks
Yeah,
was targeted pretty heavy yesterday.
he
What
was
are you
definitely
giving
game
up for
plan.
Brandon Cooks?
Oh, you can get Brandon Cooks for cheap. Like he was on waivers a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking at it going, oh, I have an extra tight end here. Uh, like I don't really want anybody on my bench that's not a running back. Honestly, all my benches are all running backs. And so, like going after somebody who has Jerome Ford, like I can get Brandon Cooks for Jerome Ford,
Yeah. I
and I love
was
Jerome Ford, but I also like the upside that Cooks brings when the Cowboys are going to continue to score points.
Ford has a very nice schedule coming up, and he's gonna have a big end of the season. All right, how about Terry McLaurin and Brian Robinson?
I think Robinson's a sell for me because he's a top 5 or 10 running back right now, and I don't think he's good enough to keep that up. But Terry McLaurin is on the other end of the spectrum. I'm buying Terry McLaurin because he's super talented, and of course he's tied with Howell. A lot of these teams that I drafted Howell in, I have either McLaurin or Jahan Dotson or
Yeah,
both.
or
And
Logan
so
Thomas.
Logan Thomas, yeah, another guy who's hasn't done a whole lot this year, but definitely has the ability to have huge games down the stretch.
Yeah, and then Minnesota was the last one. So Ty Chandler, and of course Jordan Addison. Even with Jefferson coming back,
That's a sleepy one. Sleepy.
yeah. So we
Ty
have
Chandler. Good luck finding Ty Chandler if you're in the league with me because I have him in all my leagues, all my
right.
redraft leagues. Ty Chandler was a draft pick of mine, and I just stashed him because I predicted this before Labor Day that Ty Chandler would take over for Alexander Madison. And I was kind of worried when they signed Cam Akers, but with Cam Akers going down with the Achilles, it sucks, but it also puts my prediction right back in the crosshairs as already coming true because Ty Chandler looked a million times better than Alexander Madison last
Of
night. Went
course.
for 110 yards. Madison fumbled again. This dude cannot hold on to the football this year, which wasn't even a concern coming into this year. I was surprised. I was like, oh, Madison's solid, but he's nothing special. And I was like,
Right.
Ty Chandler is explosive. He does all the things that Madison doesn't do. And that's why the prediction came true for me. It's like, oh, Ty Chandler. I'm going to stash him and Jerome Ford on every team because I believe in their ability.
Yeah.
And just so it happens, Nick Chubb gets hurt. Kareem Hunt is kind of medium washed,
And he
and
wasn't there anyway.
Ty Chandler only had to compete with a guy who we don't really think that highly of as a fantasy community anyway. So
Ty Chandler,
it
another Tar Heel.
yeah, and a good one.
Yeah, I in my home league, I sat on Jerome Ford for so long, and he became a numbers casualty
Mhm.
because of the rookie draft, because of the guys that I picked up in the rookie draft, and um, I really wish really wish that I had kept Jerome
Yeah,
Ford and not worried about Condre Miller. So Aaron Schatz today tweeted the toughest offensive schedule so far for this year based on average defensive DVOA of your opponents. And if you don't follow Aaron Schatz on Twitter, you should.
Mhm.
So the toughest upcoming based on DVOA: Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Tennessee, Cleveland. Now, that 4.5% above average DVOA for Cleveland's opponents is not against fantasy running backs.
Mhm.
Their strength of schedule is favorable for points allowed to opposing running backs in fantasy. And then the easiest schedule is Washington and Dallas. Um, Dallas has the Giants again. No, they played them twice. Washington's
Yeah.
played the Giants twice too, I think. Miami, Minnesota, and Kansas City. Kansas City is an interesting one because Rashee Rice can do some things. Obviously, Kelsey is Kelsey.
Yeah.
Mahomes is Mahomes, and everybody wanted Sky Moore to be the thing, but Rashee Rice's talent has overcome. So
I don't know about that.
it becomes a target share issue. You have Kadarius Toney, Justin Watson, Rashee Rice, and Sky Moore, and they're all competing. And Rice has been the most efficient out of all of them. But the offense is so spread out, you can't. It's kind of like the Baltimore running back room. How
Mhm.
can you trust any of them? But if you were to be targeting any of the Chiefs, give me one.
Sky Moore. I believe in talent, and Rashi Rice is not that talented. He's explosive after the catch. He's their form of Debo Samuel. He's the guy that they want to run bubble screens through because he can run after the catch. He has bricks for hands. He already leads the team in drops, and usually Kelsey leads the team in drops because he gets so many more targets.
Yeah.
But none of these wide receivers get more than 60% of the snaps because they always rotate. Like even Kelsey comes off the field for 20% of the snaps because they're always rotating receivers in and out of the game. Andy Reid wants to create mismatches. And so he runs positionless football. It's what Arthur Smith dreams of when he has all these guys that he drafts in the first round. But unfortunately, the X's and O's part of it that Arthur Smith lacks, Andy Reid has in spades. He's the best to ever do it. So he can put all of these guys in different positions on any given play. And I think that if you trust any of them, I don't. I don't want to have any of these guys down the stretch because you can't count on their workload. Rashi Rice would be probably towards the bottom because I think he's a sell candidate, and I do need him to score less than 9 points tonight to beat somebody.
Oh,
J to beat JB Cho, and it's redraft royalty. It's an expert league, like it's absolutely brutal. Like every from top to bottom, we're playing the best of the best every week, and I'm playing JB Cho this week, and I'm in second place, and he's in fourth place, and he has Rashi Rice and 9.15 points, and he beats me. So I need Rice to chill for a bit. Like I'm okay with Rice scoring 6 points, 7 points, eight
yeah,
points. But if he scores 9.15, then I lose and I drop below JB in the standings, and I can't have that.
right. I don't have him anywhere important, so I'll help you out, and I won't be rooting for him to have a big game. I do need a big game out of Mahomes though. In
Oh
the
yeah.
Chuck Bass Bash, it's a 5 quarterback only league, and I had uh, I ran into a problem this week with buys, which happens to every team in this Bass Bash, and I have Mahomes tonight. My fifth quarterback spot is blank because Derek Carr was on a bye. So I went and dropped him and picked up Marcus Mariota.
Yeesh.
I'm never going to root for somebody to be injured, but if it's going to happen, it it should happen tonight. And Mahomes, so I need Mahomes to have a huge game. Uh, but of the Chiefs receivers, I like Justin Watson a little bit. I think he's a little bit. Um, I think he's the guy who's going to be a little bit more reliable if you need a deep flex option. If you're in a deep league, a 16 team league, he's probably not available if you're in a 32 team league. But if you're in a deeper league, try and look at Watson for the rest of the season because he's got to have favorable matchups coming up, except for against the Raiders, who they're not a pushover anymore.
quite a change.
Yeah, it's been beautiful. I had this 2 week period right around the Josh McDaniels firing where it was just like this renaissance of my eagerness in content creation and just like celebration. I had a huge live stream with a bunch of Raiders guys. I had like so much good content, but it was only for Raider fans, so because nobody else gave a shit. Um, all right, we're winding down. We're gonna do the power rankings and get you out of here. Most of the time, I give people the option. We do have the wheel that we could spin, but I think I have a good topic for Bo McBrayer, and I'm just going to throw it at you. So we're going to go from 5 to 1, and you're going to give me your top 5 ranked Super Bowl party foods. So you're
Yes.
having a Super Bowl party, everybody's coming over, you got the big screen fired up, you got auxiliary TVs in other rooms, you got the patio working because it's woodland and we get 70 degrees in January, February.
Yep.
What 5 best things are going to be on your table for people to sample?
So you sprung this on me before the show started, but I've already thought of a top five, and I've whittled it down to five that I've actually done for a Super Bowl party at my house. And
Okay.
so I want you to be cognizant that these are all five things that I've made for a Super Bowl party.
Yeah,
But
it's like a starts and sits column.
number five is bacon wrapped jalapeno poppers.
Woo!
And I'm not talking like, yeah, we're not talking like your basic cream cheese carving out the, yeah, it's better than that. We actually make little bowls out of the jalapenos. Instead of having the whole pepper, it's half pepper so I can overload and overflow it. And I make a 5 cheese blend to fill it in with bacon inside. I put bacon bits in the cheese filling, and then I char the outside of the jalapeno and wrap it in bacon and throw it on the smoker. And then we dip it in like a honey barbecue sauce or an apricot barbecue sauce. So we're going all out with the bacon wrapped jalapeno poppers. That's number five. So we're already off to a pretty decent start,
That's
wouldn't you say,
coming out of the
Brendan?
gate strong. And just for you people in the Midwest and the South, when he says bacon bits, what he's talking about is crumbled bacon,
Yeah,
not the jar
not
of
from the
bacon
package.
bits.
There is no deskant pack anywhere near this thing.
Yeah, and I was going to say this is like when you do a starts and sits column or a starts and sits video, you put your money where your mouth is. I don't give you a
Yes.
start that I'm not starting. I don't give you a sit that I didn't put on my bench. Bo's not giving you a Super Bowl food that he's not putting on his counter for his guests. So,
I put 4 dozen of these bacon wrapped jalapeno poppers out there for a Super Bowl party about 3 years ago, and there were no leftovers, and there was only 10 people here, so there was an average of 4 to 5 poppers per body, and half of those were kids. So they got demolished.
yeah, nice. All right, what's your number 4?
Number four is pulled pork sliders, but it has to be on a pretzel bun.
Okay.
So I go the barbecue route. I make a whole pork shoulder. I load it down with Smoke Shack. I actually use my hot sauce as the binder instead of yellow mustard. That's a little trick of the trade that you can use yourself. Is use the binder instead of a regular yellow mustard or olive oil. Some people use all sorts of different things to bind the seasoning to the outside of the meat. I use hot box and I cover it in Smoke Shack and I smoke it. I pull it apart and then I make that same apricot barbecue sauce, apricot habanero barbecue sauce for the pulled pork because it needs some extra fruity flavor to it. And
Hmm.
I put them on steamed pretzel buns.
Yeah,
And then,
of
of
course.
course, I have my mom's home jarred dill pickles that I'll skewer through them. And so that, like, just incredible. It's so basic. It's got steamed pretzel bun, pulled pork, barbecue sauce, dill pickles, skewered. Throw a pulled platter out there. Watch people go in like sharks on chum.
Now, I've always traditionally done mustard as
Yeah,
the binder on the
me
outside.
too. Like traditionally, yes.
Yeah, but this next time I do a pork shoulder or a Boston butt, I'm using the hot box. And the other thing I actually wanted to say about Smoke Shack is when I make a rub for ribs or any kind of pork that I'm smoking, I tend to not put sugar in it. And I noticed once I started using the Smoke Shack that it does create a thicker bark
Mhm.
because of that sugar.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
little science trick that I pull there.
I got my plate and it's full up with jalapeno poppers and my sliders, and I'm like, I need to stack something on top of this. What are we doing for number 3?
We're doing thin crust pizza.
What?
Yes. Like
That's out of the
I'll
box.
yeah, so I will take and I'll make full like 3 or 4 batches like 4 full size large balls of fresh homemade home aged in the fridge pizza dough. I'll make a whole giant pot of my pizza sauce, and I'll let it sit out there. I'll let it ferment in the fridge for 48 hours, sometimes 3 days in advance to get that funk,
Mm-hmm.
that good flavor, that good gluten formed on the dough itself. I'll stretch it out. I'll cornmeal dust it or semolina dust it. I'll throw it on the hot steel. When you have yourself some, you could do anything with pizza. Like
Mm-hmm.
thin crust, you roll them out flat, square. You could do square, you could do round. You could throw them in a pan, make Detroit style with the crispy cheese edges. You can do anything, but if you keep it thin crust where it's bite sized, you cut it in little squares, and you can throw that on top of your plate. It doesn't even weigh the plate down because you could eat a billion of those little flat, square, thin crust pizzas. And like, I'll just do like simple pepperoni or simple Italian sausage, a little bit of basil chiffonade on top, olive oil drizzle. Done. Hands up. It's easy. The prep is straightforward. Most of the prep is just letting it sit in the fridge and work scientific magic. But pizza is an amazing Super Bowl party food.
Now, there are 3 things that Bo doesn't know right now, you guys. Number 1 is that this is not me trying to mine him for what he likes in his top 5 or whatever. This is me getting the menu put together for my Super Bowl party. Number 2, number 2 is that pizza just blew me away. When you think about pizza parties or Super Bowl parties, some people will order a bunch of pizzas. I happen to be a former pizza professional, and Super Bowl Sunday was usually one of our biggest days of the year. That just totally took me, like, I was not expecting that. I'm thinking like tamales and wings and buffalo chicken dip and whatever. But his pizza just like totally threw me. The other thing that he doesn't know is that I am a really good pizza chef with designs on my own pizza restaurant in Yountville, which never got off the ground. But the business model was there. So this is interesting because I think that in February, pizza is going to be on my Super Bowl menu. So thank you, Bo. All right. Now I have some squares of pizza that are mixing in with the jalapeno cheese, and there's some barbecue sauce on top of them, or mixing in there. What's number 2?
Well, I mean, you can't have a Super Bowl party without some good crispy fried wings. And so I've been known to throw down wings. Like, you can go from hot buffalo to any flavor you want, but I like the fried wings. You do the cornstarch dredge, get them really crunchy, crispy, fry them hard, top them with whatever sauce you want, seasoning blends. Like, I've made wings with every seasoning blend on my rotation. It comes down to, if you get the right texture, you know what you're doing, butchering the wings yourself, drying them out with a dry brine, getting everything, the skin ready to go. It's so easy. It's so good. And if you, whether you like ranch or blue cheese, it doesn't matter because it's all about the wing in the first place.
Right.
If you have a good wing, it'll be good with ranch. It'll be good with blue cheese. It'll be good with celery and carrots. The thing that gets left on the plate uneaten half the time on the wings, it's like you're still going to want to eat that celery stick because it's got wing juice on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I've even peeled the skin off of the wings and wrapped the celery and carrots in the wing skin because it was so good.
I am I'm a wings dude. Every Super Bowl I do wings. I I'm not a big deep fryer though. I'm a baked guy. So I will steam the wings for
Yeah.
20 minutes just to render some of the fat, then dry them off in the refrigerator for about an hour, and then I put them under the broiler and make them
Yeah.
super, super crispy. But the key is whatever sauce you're making, start it with melted butter. You got to put
Mm-hmm.
some garlic in there. And then
Yep.
Frank's Red Hot is super, super classic and it always hits. It always hits.
It's
But one,
undefeated.
absolutely. But one of the things that I did that slapped the fucking hardest was Kikkoman wasabi sauce and
Mm-hmm.
teriyaki mixed together with the butter, and they were teriyaki wasabi wings, and they went hard. Some
Yeah.
mustard based sauces are also really good with wings, but yeah, wings are legit. They should be at every Super Bowl party.
So,
All right,
Brendan, I got to ask you, since you're going to be doing the wings, of course. I mean, what's a Super Bowl party without them?
right.
Is how about you do your buttermilk, whatever marinade you're going to do for the wings, if you're going to soak them beforehand. I don't know what you do, but I like
Wet
to
brine.
see. Yeah, so wet brine. You can obviously add Frank's Red Hot to that, buttermilk or pickle juice, whatever you want to use. I use Hot Box again,
Okay.
and the flavor profile is off the charts. I season my dredge with Shelby Street Heat Nashville Hot Blend, and then I create
Okay.
a hot Nashville hot oil to brush on the chicken after it's done. Or what you can do is what I do is I melt the butter and I make a hot box Shelby Street Heat, very spicy but sweet at the same time, buffalo sauce of my own. It's a very very hot wing. If you can handle it, it will make you cry happy tears.
Yeah. Oh, the Nashville hot is so good.
It's my most popular one. Like everybody, I get the most positive feedback of any of my products from the Shelby Street Heat.
Now, I have a partner who spent her middle school years in China and vacationing in Sichuan, where you are served the hottest food on the planet, and to
Hmm.
wash it down, you get boiling tea. So she has an alien mouth that's just scar tissue.
Yeah,
And when we get Indian food or Thai food or whatever food is out there
level
that's
5.
hot, I have literally said before in the DoorDash notes, think of the hottest food you've ever made. Make it that hot and then double it and make it twice as hot as that. That's how she wants it. I can't hang. I'm
No,
habanero hot. I can't do like the nuclear Asian hot. I've made stuff with Shelby Street that she was like, "Oh, that's hot. That's good." Normally she's like, I can't taste the spice, but with the Shelby
yeah.
Street heat, she's been like, yeah, it's there. She gets it. So kudos
Those wings
and
though
thank
with the
you.
Shelby Street.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it all goes back to Nashville hot chicken and that
Hmm.
chicken oil that you
Yeah,
can just like drink. And
yeah,
yeah, the huge thing out there in the universe right now is Asian flavors of chili crisp, but
yeah.
Nashville's been doing that shit for decades.
For
So
years.
next time you make chili crisp, just make it Nashville style. Say,
Yeah.
all right. So my wings are dripping on all of my pizza and my jalapeno
You're gonna
peppers.
you're gonna be just like for my
That's
number
what.
one.
That's why we're here.
Yeah. So number one,
Number one,
number one best Super Bowl party food is a whole spread, and you could do nothing but this because it's number one. That's the reason why it's number one for me is because it was my most successful, biggest attendance Super Bowl party I ever had,
a
and
ham,
it's
a big ham, right?
a full on taco bar.
Oh shit, that's not a ham.
No. So
Full taco
I
bar.
full like 5 varieties of meats that I did carnitas, I did carne asada, I did al pastor, I did tingas chicken, And then I've made fresh corn tortillas, like not the store bought stacks you
Sure.
get for $3, not Mission or Guerrero. We're talking masa on a
Yeah.
hot
Right.
skillet, let it puff up, and then you fry it in corn oil after. And then you got your cilantro, your onions. I made 4 kinds of salsa. I had hot box. I had Paco season was for most of the base of everything, and I had butter poached pineapple chunks for the al pastor tacos. I had a whole vat of pineapple chunks that were poached in Kerrygold butter,
Nice.
and people were just eating pineapple chunks with toothpicks when they were full of tacos because it doesn't count, you know.
Yeah.
So full on taco bar. Of course, you can make like a queso dip on the side, like your chips and salsa, chips and queso. It all tied together. I had a big, one of those big drink dispenser things full of horchata. I had
Whoa.
we had tequila shots. I mixed margaritas for people. We had 35 people come through, and I, of course, I'm crazy, so we were frying tortilla shells for hours straight just to have
Yeah.
enough. We went through 250 tacos.
Now that's what makes things great is that some people are just going to be like, I made a sheet pan of nachos.
Yeah,
What
it's
separates
like
the
getting
great,
everybody's hands all over.
what separates the goats from the sheep
Yeah,
is the
taco
full
bar.
on fucking taco bar. Now, not a lot of people realize this, but having grown up in Northern California is kind of misnamed. It should be called North Mexico
It
because
is. It still
we
is.
have been raised among Mexican food and real Mexican food, traditional Mexican food. Um, right?
This
Like,
was Mexico until about 150 years ago.
right.
It's
I
still
mean,
Mexico.
I said the Patwin Indians earlier. They were here until
Yeah.
the Mexicans came. I could take a rock right now and hit the number one rated restaurant in Davis, California, which is a taqueria that's run by a family who's from Jalisco, and they make the best fucking stuff. And they make secret menu items. And I go
Mm-hmm.
over there and they do a pastor that will blow your mind. They do Mexico City street tacos that are flour tortillas. And it's like any kind of meat you want with onions and bell pepper and pineapple. I like that you mentioned the Kerrygold butter because not a lot of people know the Irish Mexican connection.
Mm-hmm.
And the Irish came over to provide guns and help support the Mexicans in the Mexican Revolution when they won their independence. So, shout out to the Irish helping out Mexico. And yeah, so Taco Bar is an absolute fucking flag plant.
Yeah.
101. My buffalo chicken dip can't compete with that. Uh, so yeah,
Yeah.
so I guess for the Super Bowl this year, I'm doing some
You're
jalapeno
gonna be
poppers,
full. You're
pulled
gonna be
pork,
full.
wings, uh, the
Me
other
too.
thing that you said, and a full on taco bar. Now I'm gonna throw some chili verde and chili Colorado in there.
Yes.
Um, uh, this was pretty funny. So I do power rankings in the interview podcast. On the live stream, I do a draft. So my son and I are drafting, and randomly it came up burrito filling was the thing that we were drafting. So number 101, I had the 101, he had the 102. I said 101, I said carnitas. Goes to the 102 and he goes, another burrito. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes,
Filled
another
with
burrito
carnitas.
inside the burrito, and that burrito is filled with
Rolled up
carnitas.
again.
And I was like, no. I was drunk and I laughed for 10 minutes and it was funny. And but it was like he fucking got me. But carnitas are my 101. I would stab innocent things that are alive for carnitas as long as they're good. You can't beat it. Somehow
Next time I make carnitas, you're invited.
I
I
you don't
make
have
them
to tell
pretty
me
regularly,
twas.
so it won't be very long.
I
I
am I
will
am
I will
near your
make it with
house.
all the fixins. Yeah, I will make it with all the fixins. You know I'm good for the flavor.
Yeah.
Uh, and I
I'm
make
at
it traditional.
Dignity.
I make it in the Dutch oven. I make it with the manteca like it's supposed to be made.
Yeah,
Uh,
manteca
yeah,
is
you're
like
going
life.
to you're going to shit a brick because it holds up to any other traditional carnitas that you've had.
There are two civilizations, two culinary traditions that have figured out cook something in its own fat, and that is the Hispanic tradition of carnitas and the French tradition of confit. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, you can't beat something that is submerged in its own fat liquid and cook. Carnitas are just like they're and bacon. Like if you ever cook bacon in a cast iron skillet and it sits there and it confits in its own fat, like once the fat rises above the level of the bacon, that's when you get the best bacon. A lot of people don't think in terms like that, but if you love food and you love cooking, then you'll love Bo McBrayer and you'll love me too, because we love those things and we love to do them.
And
And
we neither one of us fits in our little screen here.
no, that's why my I'm not down here. Uh, I'm up here because it's just about my head. It's not about
I can't scoot back any farther to get in frames.
I my chair has these little feet on it, and one day I went to move the chair and it wouldn't move, and I was like, why won't my chair move? And I realized because the feet had gone under the molding, the
Oh
floorboard in the wall,
no. You're stuck.
because I've sunk it down and scooted back, and I was like, ah, all right, all right. Bo, you are a pleasure to talk to. I enjoy hanging out with you. I really, really hope to do it again soon, soon, soon in the future. We have some things coming up. I would really like to do the chili cook-off with you. There are rumors of a future podcast with us because I love bourbon and you love bourbon, and I've tasted some of your bourbon collection. And Bo is you can't spell bourbon without Bo,
That's true.
and so I thank you very, very much for spending your time with me today, and look forward to more in the future. Tell everybody where they can find you specifically, and I will never refer to it as the letter. It's always going to be Twitter for me, but let everybody know where to find your stuff.
So first and foremost, you can find my filthy, nasty, unfiltered food porn on Instagram at big time flavor underscore like CD Lamb first down. Yeah, just follow your nose. Don't get mad at me because you can't taste the picture. Your phone screen doesn't taste that good. Um, but Brendan, I have to say this has been a pleasure because it's sure beats doing yard work.
Yeah,
it's,
it does.
that's what I have on my agenda after this. And
It's your honeydew
of
day.
course,
I got it.
yeah, on Twitter, I am at Bo underscore McBigtime. That's where you find all my musings, my writing. I post there all the time. Fantasypros.com. Of course, you can find the earliest and greatest waiver wire article with myself, Derek Brown, and Pat Fitzmaurice. And then, of course, my storylines article and my hot takes article every week. During the NFL season, you can catch my dynasty and Devy work in the off season. I'm all football all the time, except when I'm doing golf.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that because that's all I see from Bo is football, or as
Yep.
Goldie Hawn used to say, football.
Football. And right above Brendan's right shoulder there, you can see the full Big Time Flavor bundle from BigTimeFlavor.co. That's the Amigo all-purpose seasoning.
Amigo got
It's
kind of short shrift. That stuff is bomb.
Yeah. You got the Shelby Street Heat Nashville Hot Blend, Hot Box Gourmet Small Batch Hot Sauce, Smoke Shack Barbecue Rub, and It's Taco Sizzin.
I feel like somebody in the marketing department at Frank's Red Hot, when they came out with the commercial, it was like, I put this shit on everything. I feel like they were just referring to Bo's stuff because there's
It was
nothing
it
that
was
I've
it was
had
a
that it's not.
premonition. It was a premonition because obviously Frank's goes way back, but I think they've been supplanted, if I'm not mistaken. Because if they got a hold of that you have a hold of, and a lot of people in the Twitter fantasy football community are already apprised of, if they got a hold of that, I'd be getting a phone call. My people would be talking to their people, and I'd have a nice fat check coming in the mail because they want to improve their own stuff. And everybody's got a number. Frank's Red Hot, give me a call and try to
Yeah.
get my number. I'm
Oh, they have
for
a
you.
variety of products. There are plenty of places out there that if they would just have Bo's proprietary blends, um,
Hit my celly. Hit
yeah.
my celly.
And for any of you out there that maybe venture capitalists that want to like blow up and make Bo rich, there will be a link in the description for all of Bo's products, as well as Bo's Twitter handle, as well as Fantasy Pros, Bo's author link, all that stuff. I thank you both for coming in. I thank everybody else for watching this. And thank you guys. I hope you win.